change of pace, US President Donald Trump has delivered a scathing speech on the corrosive impact of the left's culture war that's turned upside down US life and history to a conference at Washington's National Archives. The president says America's culture wars could be blamed on left-wing influences in the nation's education system.
Whether it is the mob on the street or the cancel culture in the boardroom, the goal is the same: to silence dissent, to scare you out of speaking the truth, and to bully Americans into abandoning their values, their heritage, and their very way of life. The left has warped, distorted, and defiled the American story with deceptions, falsehoods, and lies.
Let's bring in the Daily Telegraph's opinion editor, Sky News co-host of Outsiders, and an American but now Australian, of course, James Morrow. James, what I love about this speech is when he's off the cuff, I think the remarks can sometimes go too long. They're great for the base, they're far at the base, but I think he misses an opportunity to land a blow to the establishment. This was a scripted speech, but it wasn't a dull speech. It wasn't the usual sort of politician's speech. This is a very, very biting speech, very strong speech. You know the system. You were educated in the US.
Yep.
He's on the money, isn't he?
He's absolutely on the money. I mean, when I went to university, well, I won't say exactly how many years ago, but it was a while ago, all of these trends that we're seeing today were just starting to foment. They were just starting to bubble up. They had started, of course, in the 1960s, even in the 1950s before that. So it's really a project that's been going on nearly 100 years to, I think, turn the entire education system into this sort of leftist, Marxist, revisionist monster that it is today. But the president called out a lot of things. He called out the education system. He called out things like the 1619 Project, which was the New York Times' attempt to rewrite history and then have that rewritten history taught in schools across the land as the history of America being that of simply slavery, when in fact America did a huge deal to end slavery with the Civil War, and the story is far more complicated. But there is this push on to make it out that America is not a place that is good but needs improving, which is Make America Great Again, but rather a place that has been irredeemably compromised, is irredeemably racist, evil, all sorts of other ists, and needs to be overthrown almost by revolution, which is what all of the people who are out on the street rioting with Black Lives Matter and everything else are all about. And this, Peta, is really the important thing. Donald Trump gets that the culture wars matter. They are not just something that happens in faculty rooms and in classrooms and, oh, we don't really need to worry about it. It's stuff that happens on the streets and in our workplaces every day in Australia as well as the US.
Yeah, what I loved about that was such a credentialed speech. You know, it wasn't on the fly. It had a lot of meat in it, and I think that's a speech that, you know, people at home, you'll find it on the president's website. I'll put it on my Facebook page as well. But print it off and read it or listen to it live. I think it's incredibly important that those sorts of speeches have a currency beyond just that moment in the archive. Busy day too. He was out on the hustings, fronted a big rally in Wisconsin as well, and he took the time to launch a few more broadsides at his opponent. Let's have a listen.
But the soldier story about standing over the graves, you know the one I'm talking about. Then they do a commercial, and I said the good news about that is the gloves are off. I can now call him grossly incompetent. The man is incompetent. He's been there for 47 years. He didn't do a thing. Now all of a sudden, in years where he was never considered smart, but now he's really not considered smart. And now, all of a sudden, he's going to do what he never did in 47 years. He's going to do this and that and everything that I'm doing, everything that we're doing.
55 days to go. It is heating up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the president has made a great that's a great attack line there. Joe Biden has been in public life for 47 years, and now suddenly he's going to bring about all the changes to race relations and everything else that he was supposed to have done when he was, you know, in the Congress, when he was vice president, when he was doing all of these things. It just goes to undercut any idea that Biden can get anything done. It just shows that he's just a suit who gets put into kind of jobs to appear at places. But, you know, as he says, it's not all that clever or good at making anything happen.
And again, I've got to reiterate this massive deal this week in relation to the UAE, Bahrain and Israel in Washington. the left, the Democrats, well, the old Democrats, actually, they've gone hard left now. They're pro-Palestinian, basically. But the old Democratic Party used to, laud the fact it was a friend of Israel, always argue for, a peaceful resolution and ways to move the whole Middle Eastern debate forward. They've been shown up. If Biden has been there for 47 years and basically little progress has been made, Trump can point to his record, moving the embassy and this extraordinary deal.
And, you remember when he said he was going to move the embassy, John Kerry and all of the foreign policy expert class all said, this is going to be a disaster. The Arab street is going to rise up in rebellion, blah, 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 blah. And it's turned out to be just the opposite. Now, don't underestimate the importance of this. You can have embassy-level talks, direct flights. The cultural exchanges now between the Arab world and Israel are going to be just undo so much hatred that's been sitting there for decades, centuries. This is such a powerful move.
And you and I have been in Israel. We're in Israel together.
Have.
Go back to the point we're talking about education in the United States. You will now, through this relationship, have a generation of children in Israel and in Bahrain and in UAE growing up, not fearing Israel necessarily, hopefully having friends and contacts and businesses that move in the various countries. I think it's extraordinary. I want to go to this gaffe. I don't know that it's a gaffe. I think it's just becoming a Freudian slip. Let's have a listen.
A Harris administration together with Joe Biden as the president of the United States, the Biden-Harris administration.
Harris-Biden administration is going to relaunch that effort and keep pushing further.
He today said Harris-Biden because he thinks she's president. Harris, and someday you'll have to explain that one to me.
I can't get enough of it, James.
It's it's funny. It's like the old thing from The Simpsons. I said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet. It says what everybody is actually thinking about
exactly
this.
Right.
You got to wonder how much is Biden's heart in this too. If he's making a slip like this, I don't think. Look at his schedules. He does about 5 minutes of events a day. He's too old for this. He doesn't want to do this. He's being made to do this. That's my own personal feeling about it. I think that, everybody knows who's actually going to be in charge. Harris, but behind the scenes with Harris, the Obamas.
Aha. Well, more on that next week. James Morrow, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.